Welcome back, folks. We're going to be talking FS7 now, a camera that, I know a little bit about, with Tom Swindell and Tom Crocker. Tom, tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm a director of photography. I mainly work for BBC and Channel 4 traditionally, and in recent years I've kind of branched out into branded content, which is kind of advertising people who want to use the documentary skills. I also do quite a lot of music video, but again it's based on documentary origins.
And you are an FS7 owner?
I'm not currently an FS7 owner, just due to some paperwork issues that I could get a slight discount for. So I'm going to buy, yeah.
But you've been using it
this week, yeah. And I've been renting it and using it. Still a little bit of trouble using it on some productions because they might have been shot on other cameras. So I think in just a couple more months now, and I'll be able to use it full time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be using it tomorrow for Tate Modern Galleries. It's been great so far.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, I am Tom Crocker. I work for Sony, as the shirt says. I am the technical specialist in charge of a lot of our larger cinema and ENG cameras, and particularly, of course, these days, the FS7.
So, Tom Swindell, you've been doing, the last session was, well, Richard's, and now this session's all Tom's. But you've been doing a session this morning in the 4K theatre. Talk us through what you were doing.
Well, yeah, this morning I was talking about my career and how a camera can really affect a career. So when I first started, I came through with cameras like the Z1 and Z7 from Sony, and it was a real kind of change in the industry because at that point everyone was using digibeaters and DSR on the shoulder. So I was talking about how a camera can give you a real identity and make you, make a change to the industry and get a very kind of personal style to get to know a camera. So I was talking about the advantages of owning a camera over just hiring. For example, yesterday I had a camera and I'd never seen it before, so I had to build it all, and it's, yeah, the disadvantages of having bull bars and that kind of thing that you're not so familiar with. So that was part of the subject matter today, and it went very well. It's a full house.
Right. Tom, obviously you look after the FS7. Talk me through what makes it so special.
Well, we've seen a lot of different revolutions in digital filmmaking recently. We've had people moving on to DSLRs. We're talking about 4K. There's people moving from standard 50i type production into 50p type production. There's a lot of different boundaries. A lot of people are pushing in a lot of different ways. Also, all the large sensor stuff. And what we think the FS7 really answers is getting all of these things into one coherent package, and included in that coherence and ergonomics as well, which is sensible. Sony has a long history of making shoulder mount ENG cameras, of course. We have a lot of experience developing codecs, making sensors, and sort of answering all of these questions took a little while to get to, but we think we've got a very compelling thing here. So you've got a large sensor in an ergonomic case. You don't need to build a huge rig out of it. You can pick it up, you can run around, you can move it. It's ergonomic enough. Of course, the challenge shooting large sensor is keeping everything in focus, so making sure you can operate it with one hand, keeping the other hand free. Having a proper robust codec in it. Of course, if you're on DSLRs, a lot of the codecs are external recording boxes. It's going to get complicated however you do it. So putting everything into one coherent package was probably the aim of this product, and from the feedback, it seems like we've done a fairly good job, I think.
Well, Tom, you mentioned you've used a number of different cameras, and basically you've been shooting with this as much as you can. What is so appealing about this camera to you as an operator?
Well, it's so appealing because of the variety of lenses that I can use on there, and the fact that it used to be quite simple. I filmed BBC programmes with one lens, it was fixed, and that was my life. Whereas now the clients are huge, anything from armed forces to television production and all types of corporate work. So you always have different requirements. So I just did some branded content work with Vice. They wanted very high-end stuff, so they wanted things like Fujinon 19 to 90 PL mount zoom lens, and they wanted Cook primes. So it'd be great if a camera that I know very well, if I could just move out and use that for those kind of productions. And then when I'm doing my own music videos, I tend to use my own Nikon collection, because there's no extra higher cost for me, and I've been using things like the Lens Baby tilt transformer on there to get some tilt shift looks. So, and then if I'm doing, for example, tomorrow I'm working for Tate Modern, and they want to use zoom lenses, kind of cheap zoom lenses like Canon that don't cost more than £1,000. So yeah, there's no camera out there on the market, no matter how expensive, that I can use that variety of lenses on. So it's the versatility that does
So that E-mount
and the
is,
ergonomics
so the E-mount is really critical. Describe to anyone who's not familiar with this camera and E-mount, why is E-mount, as Tom's just explained from a practical standpoint, so popular, but from a manufacturer's standpoint, how did E-mount come about and what was the point of it? What was the purpose?
E-mount is a great way to use DSLR glass on this type of camera, and indeed across our range. You see it also in the A7S, which is another popular DSLR style camera. A lot of people have a lot of different lenses, and it made sense from us. We're trying to be a lot more open in the way we approach things in product development. You see that in the codecs we're doing as well. So creating a lens mount system that uses our lenses but is also easy for others to connect into, having a particularly narrow flange back so that if you put an adapter on it you're not losing a whole lot. Making sure that the interfaces and communication through for other systems is open and simple to do. So that's why you can see various companies, Metabones, MTF, doing different adapters, and people working very successfully with Canon glass, with Leica glass, with Nikon glass. There's a lot of different options available. That's sort of the idea behind it.
You touched on codec. Now, a lot of the industry is focused on ProRes, which is a great codec, but it's kind of 10 years old now. XAVC is a much more modern codec. Talk us through the whole world of codecs and why XAVC is something that people should be paying attention to.
Sure thing. I'll keep it fairly brief this time. If anyone is interested, I'll be on the main stage at the back on Thursday afternoon doing an in-depth thing on XAVC. But as a quick rundown, a lot of the older codecs were specified to do what people thought was in the distant future when they specified them. MPEG-2's been a great codec, it's served people, XD Cam, done very, very well, still very much in use. But once we want to start going beyond 50i production, beyond 4K or beyond HD production, we need to start looking at different options. Now, XAVC is our implementation of the very last stage of H.264. H.264 has been with us for a while in various iterations from various manufacturers, but the very highest level, which allows us to do 4K 60p, is what we've chosen for it. And the reason we've done it the way we've done it is that you can get a very high quality codec at a decent processor overhead. So when it comes time to edit and to work with this stuff, what you don't want is something that's going to immediately seize up when you start playing back 1 or 2 streams or 5 or 6, 7 or 8 streams. Because computer processing has come a long way since the previous generation of codecs, we've got a lot more redundant processing power we can use if you look at the previous generation and still get the same performance out of it. So very much a next generation codec. We've got 10-bit 422, so you've got a robust mainstream production codec. Now, of course, a lot of people are also shooting RAW and things like that, and that's great if you've got the time for that, but most productions won't want to be spending the money on RAW, won't want to be spending the time basically going through the development process of RAW files.
Buying the hard drives.
Buying the hard drives, doing the backups. It's great if you've got the time and the budget to do it, but for most productions it's not going to be practical. XAVC is robust, it's up to date, so you're going to find quality comparable to things like ProRes, DNX at about probably half the bit rate of those. Simply because you're talking about a codec where the specification was finished, I think, in 2009, as opposed to, in fact, no later than that, 2012, I think, as opposed to some of the others which are going back to 2005, 2006. So of course there's a lot of improvements.
I want to bring Tom back in here because obviously, as a manufacturer, and I understand that it's about making it as technically brilliant as you can and giving the clients as much option and choice. How do you find when you're working with broadcast clients who often are quite a few years behind in terms of what they'll accept? I mean, do you find people will happily accept XAVC?
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, I was shooting for Channel 4 News yesterday and they rung up and said, oh, you're going to do it all interlaced, right? And I was like, well, not really. I've been shooting 25p for 8 years, but, they asked for that. So, yeah, you'd be very surprised that there you are, something you're seeing on your television every night, Channel 4 News, specify to have interlaced footage. So, yeah, they are behind. And they said to me, I said, well, look, when are you going to move on? And they said, oh, yeah, it's coming soon. But with these giant institutions like the BBC, Discovery Channel, they're very big, and big things move slowly. So it does take some time to catch up. But what's nice about XAVC is that you can backdate it. Because, for example, I'm not an editor, so I'm not really in the position where I really want to learn Premiere and the new Final Cut. I quite like Final Cut 7. And I did find that someone had made a little piece of software to make this footage work straight away in Final Cut 7. So that's interesting if people are Final Cut 7 users, that you can use XAVC in there already. You have to probably search
so
about
for
online
example,
to
you've got XAVCI and you've got XAVCL. Do you favour one over the other?
Well, I tend to go for the top, so I use XAVCI at the moment. I haven't used the long GOP so much at the moment, but sometimes you do require these things. For example, I've just come back from Trinidad and out of the carnival there, and I remember last year I had a 1DC and I wanted to shoot 4K, but I couldn't because there were, you're on a truck in the middle of a carnival with thousands of people. There's no, trying to get out the laptop and back up while some beer falls off a speaker and ruins your laptop is just not an option. So we need media that can last a long time for certain jobs. So I wouldn't have a problem with these cards, but with the 1DC I couldn't shoot 4K there. So the specific job will depend on what you need to shoot. If I was going to the jungle or something and I knew I was going to be away for 2 weeks, I might be looking at an option like long GOP, because it'll mean I have to carry less media. And when you're doing all your kits on your backpack and you're going like 8 hours away from a major city or hospital, you do need to consider how much weight you're carrying with you, and you don't really want all those extra computer hard drives.
Sure.
So yeah.
So coming back to you, Tom, because I'd like to clear up for anyone watching that it's not that long GOP's lesser quality, is it?
No,
Talk to me
absolutely
about
not.
the difference between long GOP and intraframe.
Well, I mean, of course, intraframe, we save every single picture as a picture. In long GOP, we save the difference between pictures, is a very short and simplistic answer to it. Now, long GOP will take a little bit more processing power. iFrame will take a little bit more storage. In terms of the picture you're actually getting, they're going to be pretty much identical. It's really just about what kind of work pipeline you see. If you want to save money on the processing time, if you want to save money on the media, it's about not forcing you into one way or the other. There are 2 ways to encode H.264. We've given you the option of both of them. That's basically it. There really isn't much to pick in the quality between them at all.
Tom, tell me about your favourite aspects of working with this camera.
I've always loved shooting from the hip, so I always loved the kind of handles you get on the Z1 and the fact that there's not too much fuss around there. Yesterday I had a camera similar to this, a C300, and I had like 2 radio mic bits on there, and then I couldn't even get to the handle anymore. So the fact that you've now got like a wireless radio mic system, don't know if people know much about that, but that works through the hot shoe.
Well, let's assume people don't know about it. Tell us about the wireless hot shoe.
Well, yeah, I don't know too much about the technicals, but basically you plug in your radio mic and it will interface directly through a hot shoe here, which really helps remove wires.
MI shoe, as we call it, the multi-interface shoe, which is normal looking shoe, but if you look right down the bottom, you'll see there's a few pins in there. And through that, we can send power and data. So particularly on this wireless receiver, you can slot that on top, and that's all you do. There is no changing of AA, AAA batteries. There's no external cabling around the camera back into XLRs. It just sits there and works, which is, for this type of camera, again, that run and gun type stuff, that's really what you're looking for.
And I think one of the nice things from what you're saying is that you can strip it down. I mean, you've got the multi-function hand grip, but you can take all that off. You can work with the camera quite small, can't you? Yeah. I mean, how do you configure it?
Well, I personally leave it raw like this because it's just amazing for me not to have a big rig on it. It's been, since 2009 when the 5D came out, it's just been constantly chasing different bolts, weights, rigs. Every time I change a lens, it's been a problem. So just being able to put it in a bag and go is brilliant for me. I haven't had to do any extra rigging. Now, I do think if I put on a PL mount adapter and a Fusion-on 19-90, which is a lens I do like to use for higher end documentaries, I do think I'd be looking at some type of balance issues there. But I'd probably get around that by using V-lock batteries at the back.
But you can use the XDCA, can't you, to lock onto the back?
Yeah, so at the back of the camera we've got this 142-pin D-sub connector, which is hidden under here. And there's then an optional block called the XDCA FS7 that you can put on there, and that'll then give you quite a lot more different options. So aside from giving you a bit more weight at the back, I also enjoy the balance with that on it. That will give you soon, at the end of March, the ability to record ProRes directly internally onto the XQD cards. It gives you a 12-bit raw bit stream out, which you can plug into your Odyssey 7Q, your Shogun or something like that. It also gives you all of your sort of broadcaster connectors, so things like Genlock, ref out, timecode in out, and things like that, as well as changing the battery system from the smaller BPU style batteries, as you know, from the EX1 or BMW 200, to the larger broadcast V-Lock batteries. So it becomes a very different sort of camera with that on.
I think some people have maybe criticised or not understood, oh, hold on, it doesn't go on the shoulder, and they don't understand why Sony might have done that. But you know, they've made it like this on purpose, and for me, the speed really helps. So I remember I was filming at a Thai monastery recently, and being able to move a camera from there to the hip and back to there is a lot faster than the shoot before, when I was using the Amira, where actually the camera system had to come along every time, because on a 4 or 5 day shoot, the fatigue on your back for the pulling it off, you start to twist your spine. So literally, I'd be on the shoulder like that, camera system would come in, crane it off me, take it, then I'd get it back in my hand, put it there, and I was having to use kind of belts and braces and stuff to kind of keep it there.
That's an example of a technology
actually
getting in the way and slowing you down from acquiring the finish you want.
It's really about missing the shot. I mean, the editors and the executives who are paying me, they're not there, so they don't see what little problems I might have had, or the fact that it was raining or it was windy that slowed me down. They don't care. All they want to see is the rushes.
Yeah.
And if you don't produce enough rushes in the day, you're going to be in trouble getting the employment.
I want to talk a bit more about camera settings, because obviously we talked about the ergonomics, we've talked about the codec, but let's not miss the amazing array of different camera profiles, from a load of Rec 709 standard profiles to hypergammas to S-Log3. I mean, have you been using S-Log3? Have you been using? I mean, tell me about your experience with it.
So I've only had the camera for a week to test. It was quite short notice, so I haven't done extensive productions with it yet. But what I like about Sony stuff is you can make it personal. So I told a few stories earlier today about, in the kind of digibeta era, the way that the memory cards would get passed around. So particular camera operators would come up with a look, and then they'd share it around. There'd be a few guys in Bristol who had the Blue Planet look, okay, that was developed by I think DV Solutions at the time through loads of testing. So there was an element of a personal look, and I think we can get back to that now. If and when I do own this camera, I'm going to spend a lot of time creating quite a few personal LUTs that are kind of mine, and that's where it will become very interesting for me. Just that creativity in there, like a painter being able to choose all the different gamma curves, and it's going to take some time. You know, I think over a year, after about a year, I think I'd be in a really good place with it. But if you haven't got the time to develop your own, then I'd certainly be buying some in. I was looking at some videos online yesterday from some American companies. I won't mention the names, but you can actually, they've developed their own film LUTs now, and you can buy those. And the safety factor is that I could be shooting S-Log and loading that LUT, and you know, if I don't actually want to use that LUT in the final production, I've still got the S-Log, so I can change it then. So
let's talk about S-Log, Tom. I mean, S-Log2's been around a while, S-Log3 more recently. Can you explain in layman's terms what it is?
So, if we go back to the early days of Rec 709, you have organizations talking to each other, developing a color space in a system built up around cameras that had 6 stops of dynamic range, something like that. We've now gone so far beyond that. We're talking about 14 on this, but the output that we're still doing is the same kind of thing. Now, what you don't want to do, of course, is just take the bottom 6 or the top 6 and just send that out. So you've got to come up with a sensible way of getting the whole range of the sensor into that image in a good way. And that's essentially what S-Log does. It translates everything the sensor can see into that image. Now, of course, we've got all of these other curves, like you were saying. If you've got a quick turnaround production that you need to get out very, very quickly, then sure, use one of the Rec 709 curves or bring in your own or something like that. If you've got time for even a basic grade, run it through S-Log, and you'll have so much more creative control over what you come up with at the end, thanks to that.
It really affects you in the field, and it affects your actual composition, you know. So for so many years I was just avoiding highlights, you know. You always had to frame them out. You just couldn't let that highlight in there. Whereas now you can do it with a bit more confidence, and that might mean you could work a bit quicker. I remember yesterday I wasn't allowed to use S-Log or anything like that because there was a news program and they were turning it around today. and I had to find positions in this council estate where I was filming where there was no sky in the background, and it was a shame to have to do those workarounds again. So,
but isn't it interesting that if you have a client like a news channel,
yeah,
you can use Rec 709.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like 3 cameras in one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's nowadays the industry has diversified so much. I'll get some jobs where you're getting paid over £1,000 a day. Some jobs like they're offering you £250 a day. So that's the kind of difference financially. And then again, some things are going like filming the Grammys or something that's going to be projected to thousands of people. Other stuff might be for someone's personal YouTube channel. So, but it's all work. So you've got to take it nowadays. So there's the years of staff BBC cameraman are long gone, as you know.
And it's interesting, just touching. Yeah, I mean, touching on you as an operator, and clearly very accomplished and has a lot of clients. I mean, how important is choosing the right camera?
It's very important because it's an ever-changing environment, and when you walk onto set, well, not set, but the locations, you never know what's going to hit you. So, for example, yesterday looked like quite a nice warm day, but actually it turned out to be viciously cold, and so we had some problems with the presenter's eye kept watering, all that kind of stuff. So you never know what's going to hit you out there, and you need to know your equipment. For the last few years, I've struggled with turning up to big shoots, big money, and there's no way that they're renting the equipment the day before so you can have a look at it. You've just got to get there that morning. Could be a new hire house. For example, there was a Sunday morning shoot, a really big major thing, and the hire house didn't provide the dovetail plate for this O'Connor tripod. So I was there for 45 minutes trying to ring them, trying to wake them up in the morning and find out, what happened to this dovetail plate. So if I owned all my own equipment, then I really get to understand it, and it's second nature. If you speak to anyone who's like a racing car driver, a motorcyclist, a painter, it's about knowing your tools, and they know it subconsciously.
And this is what you do as a manufacturer, don't you?
So
you're basically trying
for £6,000 you can do that.
A tool that will appeal to a broad range of markets.
That's what we're trying to do, and that's sort of where the inherent flexibility comes from. Because, like you said, the days of the career cameraman at the BBC, fading if not gone completely. So we've got editors doing a bit of shooting, we've got a lot of journalists doing a bit of shooting, we've got any number of people picking up a camera because the prices have come down so much. 15 years ago, something in this sort of category would cost 100 grand. Become much more accessible, a lot more people having a go, which means that there are a lot more use cases and a lot more people who want to do a lot more different things with it, which means that you have to have a very flexible camera in order to answer those things. So that's, yeah.
Well, certainly we can't end this chat without talking about this new lens, which when we shot with it in Japan, I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting much from a stock lens that is 18-135, but I have been blown away by it. Absolutely blown away by it. Talk us through the lens.
Okay, so it's a 28-135. F4 all the way through, but some of the really nice things are, of course, it's an E-mount lens, and it's come from our stills side. But again, stills people shooting video people using stills lenses, and this is quite a nice compromise between those, because you've got 3 individual control rings, so you can do your snap zooms, got direct iris control, which is very, very nice, but it's also got an integrated zoom servo with a zoom rocker on the side, so you can also get those smooth zooms happening as well. F4 all the way through, so very, very predictable. It's been hugely successful. The only problem is we can't really make them fast enough.
Yeah, and of course that can also be controlled by the multifunction hand grip, which is reminiscent of a hand grip on an old Aton film camera. But of course it does so much more, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, the hand grip for me is sort of the big part of the camera. Like I said earlier, run everything from down there. It's because you've got 3 different assignables, a record trigger, full menu control, the zoom rocker, an iris wheel, and the button that makes the grip rotate. So, I mean, you've really got a lot of stuff down there to get to grips with.
And Tom, from a user perspective, is that something that you have taken a great advantage of in the short time you spent with the camera?
Well, yeah, I think when I started off, we were using, there was just one lens, so that's what I got used to. And in a way, I believe that's how I made my name, by like getting so much footage in the can, good quality footage, and be able to move around so quick. It has become a bit of a quagmire, really, with the amount of lenses. I remember my father would always laugh at me because he was older and he didn't understand. He was like, what's happened? Why have you now got 15 lenses, because I had a 15mm, an 18mm, a 20mm, a 24mm, a 28mm, a 35, a 50, an 85, a 105, a 135, then a 300, the 400. Now that's a lot of heavy metal to be carrying around with you. And sometimes, yeah, you want to do that. You're heading to a big studio in London, you drive down there, get the primes out the boot, pop them in, great. But what if you're, you know, in Mali in West Africa running around a music festival and there's dust and sand everywhere? You might want, you know, that lens, maybe I'd have that lens maybe one wide and maybe like a 50mm for interviews, that kind of thing. It's much smaller in the backpack, it's easier to carry around. Great dust and weather sealing on these lenses.
That's right, and on the camera as well, isn't it? It's sealed for environmental sealing.
Yes, it is. I was speaking to a guy just this morning who does a lot of oceanic photography from boats and things, and been hit by several splashes. By all means, don't submerge it, but it tolerates quite a lot in terms of dust and sand and that kind of stuff, because again, that's the kind of places it needs to go. We've been making cameras like this for a long time. The ENG cameras have to be robust. We wouldn't have that reputation. So that know-how from making cameras that go to the Antarctic and things like that, making lots of documentaries over the past 20 years, has been put into this.
Great stuff. So Sony is here at the show, of course. Do you know your booth number?
No, of course not.
It's hard to miss it. But guys, thank you for coming down. Have you got any more sessions this week?
No, I'm just, I'm not a blogger or anything like that, unfortunately. I'm just a cameraman, so I'm out there working, working for Tate tomorrow, Channel 4 News, then up to Huddersfield for a BBC documentary. Right. And then I get a day off on Sunday. So.
Fantastic. Well, of course, if anyone wants to come and chat to you, Tom, hard to miss you on the Sony booth. You guys want to come and have a little play with the camera, ask Tom any questions.
Yeah,
guys, thank you very much indeed.